question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
The empire is falling apart. The man who once dominated music, fashion, and culture is now on the brink of complete ruin. Former bodyguard Gene Deal revealed that Diddy isn't just facing legal battles, he's staring at financial collapse. For years, people suspected he paid off enemies to stay quiet, and Deal claims it's true. Tens of millions spent every month on victims, witnesses, and accomplices to keep them silent. But now the money has dried up, the payments have stopped, and the silence is ending. What once looked like power and protection now feels more like a cage closing in on him.
A piece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freak-offs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freak-offs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop.
We have to recognize the scale of what's happening. Diddy once spent tens of millions to keep his past hidden, handing out hush money like party favors, but that party is over. Courtrooms are buzzing, lawyers are preparing, and insiders say hundreds of lawsuits may soon surface, with accusations stretching back decades. Gene Deal says bluntly, he is finished. And when those closest to you echo that, the empire isn't falling, it's already rubble. The timing couldn't be worse. Diddy has already been convicted under the Mann Act, with prosecutors exposing his infamous freak-offs in luxury hotels from New York to Las Vegas. Disturbing video evidence of him assaulting Cassie has already destroyed his public image, showing that brother love was a facade hiding something much darker. Prosecutors insist he orchestrated everything. And now, with no money left to seal lips, every witness, every flight, and every night of excess will come out in court and in headlines. The justice system isn't done with him, the media isn't done with him, and the people he once paid to stay silent are no longer afraid, or bound by cash.
I'm sorry, I'm just I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
Victims are finally speaking out. Witnesses are turning, and long-buried secrets are coming to light. Lawyers across the country are preparing lawsuits, with some predicting more than 100 new claims before sentencing. These aren't just personal misconduct accusations, but charges of a larger operation that blurred the line between nightlife empire and criminal enterprise. Former staff, ex-lovers, and accomplices now have no reason to stay silent, giving prosecutors the evidence they once struggled to find. Each new case could bring fresh witnesses, recordings, and shocking revelations. Adding fuel to the fire are persistent rumors of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, said to hold the hush money that kept everything quiet for years. If uncovered, those accounts could reveal not only where the missing millions went but also a pattern of systematic cover-ups. Insiders believe forensic accountants are already tracking wires, shell companies, and hidden funds that could connect scandals from Los Angeles hotels to Caribbean islands. The cruel irony is that the very money meant to protect his empire may end up being the evidence that destroys it.
Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that
Shout out to Wendy Williams.
We've seen this story before. Empires don't fall from the original crime but from the cover-up. Nixon had his tapes, Enron had its ledgers, and now Diddy may have Cayman accounts that reveal not just hush money but possible fraud, tax evasion, and betrayal on a massive scale. If investigators gain access, they won't just uncover his payments but also map out an entire network of names, celebrities, politicians, and industry figures, linked through wire transfers and hidden deals. The bigger question is who else could fall with him. But the money trail isn't the only dark secret. Whispers persist about the cassette tapes, private recordings Diddy allegedly used as blackmail to control partners and accomplices. Cassie herself testified that these tapes were held over her like a weapon. Now, rumors say some of those recordings are circulating underground, quietly passed between insiders. What was once his shield of power has become the very evidence that could destroy him.
You to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah, you'll have a rude awakening.
This is where it gets chilling. These tapes aren't just evidence, they are weapons. For years they silenced victims, threatening reputations, careers, and families with the risk of one leak. But now, with prosecutors looking for leverage and lawyers eager to strike, those recordings could become the final nail in Diddy's coffin. If one surfaces in open court, not as his threat but as evidence against him, the fallout could be massive. A star's name, an industry titan's face, or proof of powerful enablers would ignite a scandal far beyond Diddy himself. That's the nightmare haunting Hollywood. Because if the tapes go public, entire brands, careers, and reputations could be destroyed overnight. Whispers say it's not a matter of if but when. And when it happens, the story won't just be about Diddy's downfall, but about a cultural reckoning, revealing who stood beside him, who enabled him, and who stayed silent while his empire rotted. The tapes may already be circulating, and if they surface, the scandal could engulf far more than just one man.
Once worked together a long time ago, they're not friends now, they don't like each other, and yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been...
While the world is focused on offshore accounts and secret tapes, the real collapse may be happening inside Diddy's own circle. Those who were once closest to him are no longer protecting him, they are protecting themselves. Assistants are quietly seeking lawyers, former advisors are making late-night calls to prosecutors, and old friends are exploring plea deals. Loyalty has turned to survival, and his inner circle is described as a palace in freefall, with everyone scrambling for the exits before the walls cave in. Court documents already suggest dozens of insiders knew about, or even took part in, the so-called freak-offs, and now some are reportedly negotiating with authorities, offering cooperation in exchange for lighter consequences. The betrayal is staggering. People who once managed his travel or carried his bags are now sitting with investigators, sharing details once thought buried. The deeper prosecutors dig, the clearer it becomes this wasn't just one man's actions but a sprawling operation. And when operations fall apart, it's the lieutenants who flip first, raising the question, are we watching the beginning of a cascade where his entire empire turns witness against him?
Prosecute him if it was just a manic.
They prosecuted him on all these other things and they did find him guilty of this, so that still counts.
The jurors don't always get it right. We don't have to agree with their decision.
I just don't know because I wasn't sitting in the courtroom. You got to see the witnesses. Why didn't they believe Cassie? Why didn't they believe Jay?
How does a man who once believed he was untouchable handle the collapse of his empire? In prison, Diddy is no longer in control. Rumors say his behavior has shifted drastically, from powerful mogul to restless inmate, pacing his cell for hours and replaying his trial in his head. Guards describe him as agitated, while fellow prisoners whisper about late-night outbursts and a temper he can't contain. For someone who built his image on wealth, power, and dominance, the move from private jets and luxury estates to a crowded Brooklyn detention center is more than a fall from grace, it's a psychological shock. Insiders claim he tries to project strength in public, standing tall and rigid. But behind closed doors he seems haunted, muttering about betrayal and broken loyalty. The paranoia is obvious. He fears not just prosecutors but the very people from his inner circle, convinced that those he once trusted are now feeding information to the government.
Mandatory. You didn't fall within one of the exceptions. What now happens when you've been convicted of two of those particular charges? That's what the judge is going to be looking at. And again, right now, considering it sounds like statements that the defense made, essentially admitting that Sean Combs is somebody who has had personal problems, but they were doing so to try and argue that he should not.
That paranoia now stretches to the fear of leaks. He knows the walls have ears, yet he still tries to pull strings from behind bars, using back channels to issue shaky orders to allies on the outside. The irony is sharp. The very tactics that once held his empire together now look like desperate moves to control a crumbling narrative. Rumors say he obsessively tracks every headline, raging when whispers of offshore accounts or secret tapes dominate the news. Psychologists call it status shock, the violent crash when privilege is erased overnight. In Diddy's case, it shows as wild swings between arrogance and despair, one day boasting he'll walk free and rebuild, the next sinking into silence, refusing to speak to anyone. That volatility rattles guards, unsettles inmates, and fuels the growing belief that his mental state is fracturing under the weight of collapse.
This was when his personal assistant was on the stand, and they were asking him about that he had witnessed that Sean Diddy Combs had taken, and he talked about And he said that one of those pills was in the shape of President Obama's face. Got some reaction from the juries as if just to make an acknowledgement as to, oh, that's really interesting. That was in the shape of President Obama.
Adding to the strain are whispers that he's trying to negotiate, not for freedom, but for the preservation of what little legacy remains. Reports suggest he's pressed his lawyers to safeguard his brand, his music catalog, even the futures of his children from being swallowed by the collapse. But with lawsuits piling up, assets frozen, and his name turned toxic across the industry, those efforts look more like desperate gestures than masterstrokes. Every attempt to salvage his image only underscores how far he's fallen, and how little power he truly has left. And yet, there's something chilling about his refusal to concede defeat. Even here, he speaks as though the empire can be rebuilt, that one deal, one pardon, one stroke of luck could flip the story. But each day spent in that cell strips the illusion further. What we're witnessing isn't just the fall of a mogul. It's the unmasking of a man who built his identity on invincibility, now staring down the one enemy he cannot outspend, outmaneuver, or silence: time itself.
That he has, with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case you would have others charged, it was a statute designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove, like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal.
Legal insiders suggest prosecutors are no longer circling just Diddy, but the entire machine that enabled him. Travel agents who booked discreet flights, assistants who sourced supplies for infamous parties, bodyguards who turned their eyes away. Suddenly, all of them are vulnerable. When the cash dried up, their shield of protection vanished with it. And prosecutors have already painted Diddy as the mastermind, transporting, directing, personally engaging. Those words didn't just frame him, they cast a shadow over everyone in his orbit. The real danger now is that the very people who once protected him may become the government's most valuable weapons, flipping under pressure to provide the testimony that strips away his last defenses. And looming above all of this chaos is a political wildfire. Could Diddy's only salvation lie in the hands of the most polarizing man in American politics? The whispers of a Trump pardon have moved beyond conspiracy chatter. They are being dissected in Washington and Hollywood alike. History reminds us that Trump and Diddy were once close, sharing champagne at Manhattan parties, posing together at charity galas. But their relationship fractured when Diddy turned on him, publicly calling for Trump's political downfall. Now, Trump himself admits it, pardoning Diddy would be complicated because of those words. Yet the idea hasn't disappeared. For some insiders, the mere possibility serves as a distraction tactic, keeping cameras flashing and speculation burning while Trump faces his own firestorms.
Did he walk that back, do you think?
Picture the scenario. Diddy, freshly sentenced and staring down years behind bars, suddenly pulled back into freedom by the stroke of a presidential pardon. The uproar would be seismic. Victims would rage. Activists would flood the streets. Communities already wounded by the scandal would feel betrayed all over again. Industry rivals who cheered his downfall would now be forced to reckon with his return. But for Trump, the calculus is colder. A pardon wouldn't just save Diddy. It would hijack the news cycle, drag every camera lens toward him, and re-establish him as the ultimate broker of power, deciding with a single gesture who suffers and who walks free. Could the fate of one of hip-hop's fallen kings really be reduced to a pawn in a much larger political game? The whispers say yes. Reports suggest Diddy's allies are already lobbying Washington, pushing his case in back channels of power. Meanwhile, opponents like Curtis 50 Cent Jackson have sworn to block it, promising that the fight won't end in court but in the political arena. The irony feels scripted. Two moguls who spent decades feuding in music now colliding in the halls of politics. If Trump grants the pardon, he lights a firestorm of outrage.
This clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and, smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks. It's every day, every hour.
No matter what happens, one thing is certain. The fallout will be catastrophic. This isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about an empire unraveling, a culture forced to confront its shadows, and powerful players across music, fashion, and politics bracing for the aftershocks. The lawsuits are only beginning. The leaks are only starting. The betrayals inside his circle are just surfacing. And those rumored tapes? If they ever see daylight, this scandal won't just stain Diddy, it will engulf everyone tied to him. We're not just watching a trial. We're watching the possible collapse of an entire era. So, what secrets are still buried? And who will be the next to fall as this storm spirals out of control? Let us know in the comments, because this story is far from over. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, empires don't just crumble. They collapse in waves. Goodbye for now.